Welcome to Allen Avenue Unitarian Universalist Church's online worship. I'm Susie Hubley, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. I'm a member of the worship committee. We are a freely gathered, open, welcoming community supported by your contributions, which can be made with the donate button on our website by going to our Breeze program if you are a member, or by mailing your check to 524 Allen Avenue, Portland, Maine. Please note if the donation is your pledge or a gift to our Share the Plate for November. Our Share the Plate for November is Maine Adaptive Sports and Recreation. Maine Adaptive believes that having access to and participating in recreational sports is integral to a well-rounded life for every person. Founded in 1982, Maine Adaptive is now the largest year-round recreation program in the state of Maine for adults and children with disabilities. To learn more about this organization, please go to the website linked to our order of service today. This morning's service about acceptance is presented by Allen Avenue's Worship Committee. Lay-led worship is a tradition at this and many other Unitarian Universalist societies. At Allen Avenue, the Worship Committee either sponsors or presents one service per month. On most other Sundays, worship is led by our minister, the Reverend Donna Dalham. You're invited to join us today, November 29th, at 10:45 a.m. for our congregational conversation and coffee hour. This Zoom link can be found on our website. To learn more about Allen Avenue Unitarian Universalist Church, please go to our website at A2U2.org. Thanks.
Here are the chalice words for today. They are from M. Maureen Killeran. For every time we make a mistake and we decide to start again, we light this chalice. For every time we are lonely and we let someone be our friend, we light this chalice. For every time we are disappointed and we choose to hope, we light this chalice. Blessed be.
Good morning, and hello to all the children and children at heart. I'm Susan Selby. Welcome to our Time for All Ages this morning. The topic for our grown-up service today is acceptance. Do you know what kinds of things there are to accept? I would love to hear your answers, but it's hard with us not being together today. So I will imagine what your answers might be. Acceptance means accepting people, and of course, welcoming people of all colors and backgrounds, even with different languages. We do that here at our church when we work with Family Promise. Some of you have played with kids from Family Promise. The Statue of Liberty is one of our country's biggest symbols of accepting people from all over the world. Bring us your tired, your poor, your huddled masses, she says. That is a really accepting attitude, don't you think? You can accept a friend's invitation to play and accept that people from around the world have differences, but are the same on the inside. It is fun to accept a gift being given to you. Sometimes you or a friend or brother or sister is sad. That is hard to accept. What can we do when we feel that way? This injured heart is accepting the calming, friendly hands that are trying to make it feel better. Sometimes we accept creatures that are very different from us. These are symbols of many world religions. As you use, we accept that people have different beliefs. Sadly, we must accept that we must keep our distance to squash the coronavirus. It is taking a very long time, and we sure don't like to accept that. But someday in the future, we will be so extra happy to be able to be together again. I can accept that, can't you?
Good morning. My name is Erica Bartlett, and my piece is titled Acceptance Isn't the Last Step. As some of you know, when I was younger, I weighed a lot more than I do now. At the time, I had a very negative body image, and in some ways, I thought I had to dislike my body because of a false belief. I believed that if I accepted myself as I was resigning myself to always being that way. I didn't want that. I wanted to be able to climb mountains and stop thinking so much about food. I figured if I was going to change, I had to dislike the person I was. And yet, it was only when I accepted myself that I began changing my relationship to food and getting in better shape. Through this process, I learned that acceptance is necessary because nothing will change until you acknowledge reality for what it is. Acceptance doesn't have to mean loving the situation, but it does mean you can't be in denial and refuse to face what's going on. In my case, I had to accept that both my way of eating and my relationship to food were disordered. I also had to accept that if I wanted to change, I would need to find ways to soothe and comfort myself that didn't involve food. This, in turn, meant accepting that certain parts of my life were upsetting me more than I wanted to admit, including the death of my mom. Otherwise, I wouldn't have needed comfort to begin with. Acceptance is also something I work with people on as a mindful eating coach. This includes sharing a 5-step strategy to help people meet their true needs instead of automatically reaching for food. And in this approach, acceptance is only step 3. It's not the end of the road, and it doesn't mean giving up. And of course, this applies to so much more than eating. As just one example, we can't address climate change until we accept that it's happening and that humans are causing it. This isn't easy for some people to do. As Abigail Dillon noted in the book All We Can Save, quote, "For many people who have been comfortable until now, it is seemingly impossible to accept that anything so disruptive as climate change is possible." End quote. And yet, it is possible. But even knowing that, it still feels overwhelming. And sometimes it makes me want to toss up my hands in despair. When that happens, I go back to the last 2 steps in the approach for mindful eating, the steps that come after acceptance. Strategize and take action. From an eating perspective, this means that I comfort myself these days with things like going for walks and playing with cats, and sometimes by having favorite foods. And on a larger scale, I'm finding new ways to get involved and help with climate change, because while I've accepted it's real, I'm not giving up. Instead, it's time to act.
Good morning. My name is Anna Noyes Benoit, and my reflection is called Don't. I often begin thinking about an idea by consulting the dictionary. So here's what Wikipedia says about acceptance. Acceptance in human psychology is a person's assent to the reality of a situation, recognizing a process or condition, often a negative or uncomfortable situation, without attempting to change or protest it. The concept is close in meaning to acquiescence, from the Latin to find rest in. When I asked my husband what he thought of the word acceptance, his response was, don't. I understand what he's saying because there's so many things these days that seem unacceptable. Unacceptable politicians, unacceptable potholes, unacceptable failing health, unacceptable behaviors, and unacceptable death. I began to think about what I knew about acceptance, and the serenity prayer came to mind. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. There are lots of parts to this simple prayer. The call to accept what we can't change, like death and taxes, the courage to address things that can be changed, and the recognition that we can affect some change. Finally, knowing the difference between the two necessitates wisdom. Wisdom entails experience and a detached perspective of the issue. And according to the Greek playwright Aeschylus, comes through suffering and against our will through the awful grace of God. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, the pioneer in hospice and one of the first educators in the area of death and dying, called acceptance the last stage of grief and loss, in the process of regaining stability after a death. My sister died 5 years ago, and truthfully, I haven't accepted that. The tragedy to her husband and our family seems very fresh. A dear friend died recently, and I have not begun to accept that either. I'm thinking of the Dylan Thomas poem, "Do not go gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at close of day. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. The wise men know at their end, dark is right." Thank you.
Oh my God, what have I done? I asked myself. I was sitting in the cabin where Tyrrell and I were beginning our honeymoon. What had I done? I had just said I do. I accept this woman to be my lawful wedded wife. Oh my God, I mumbled, fortunately under my breath. I hardly even know who Tyrrell is, and I just said, I do, to forever. Well, not quite forever, it turns out, but 57 years and counting. What have I done? I asked at that long ago beginning. And now I know the answer. I had done the smartest thing of my life. Even if Tyrrell does not like liver. But marriage is not a thing you accept just once. You must accept it again and again, renewing your decision, your vows over and over, and yet once more. We are yins and yangs. We have different aspects, and we change in every minute of every day. Our relationships require perpetual reassessment and recommitment. So just as Tyrrell keeps accepting me, I keep accepting her, even if she does not like liver. She doesn't like fried clams either, or oysters. Acceptance seems an easy thing, but it is a complex matter, because anything you accept has its opposite, and you must accept the full package. Acceptance allows no exceptions. By accepting life, we accept death as well, just as we accept both sides of our politicians, just as we accept ourselves when we look in a mirror. Accepting lawful wedded spouse, accepting marriage, we accept also the fact that one day, somehow, we will part. We accept, in sickness and in health, from the strength of youth to the weakness of old age, from the moment when two say they are one to the time before parting, when they really seem to have merged into a single entity, we accept. I often think of what Tyrrell's mother said after 60 plus years of marriage and a stretch of exasperation at forgetting things. She said, referring to her husband, "David and I are two people with just one brain." She accepted that, just as Tyrrell and I accept each other's shortcomings and our own increasing reliance on each other, despite the lack of liver and fried clams and oysters. By the way, that's what restaurants are for. They are places where you and your other can go to renew your mutual acceptance while ordering different foods. Except that Tyrrell and I have small appetites, so we always share a meal, which is never liver or fried clams or oysters. We are two people become one, sitting there in the booth eating a hamburger cooked to a midpoint between what we each like. Two people with one brain. For yes, my mother-in-law's assessment increasingly applies to us too. And we accept it. Why not? After all, even if our individual IQs are declining, they add up together to more than 200. Think about that, Mr. Albert Einstein. Don't like the competition? Well, accept it. Just as Tyrrell and I accept whatever will happen next to our joined selves. Blessed be.
Good morning. My name is Mike Luce. The title of my piece is What to Accept. The Serenity Prayer asks for the ability to accept the things we can't change, the courage to change the things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. That's a good starting point. I think the wisdom includes an awareness that time is part of that equation as well. A lot of the folks I used to work with who had a history of addiction but had achieved some sobriety put their path as having finally become sick and tired of becoming sick and tired. In other words, it took time. When I worked at an alcohol detox for homeless folks, the hardest thing I had to accept was the reality of how much time it took. How many times we saw the same frequent flyers until at last some of them could achieve some meaningful sobriety. That's what I guess I'd have to call an ambivalent acceptance on my part. I had to accept folks where they were, but I couldn't give in to accepting that it was permanent. And let me tell you, that last type of accepting is a really alluring survival tool when you're working with so many people with so little hope. It's also known as working burnout. I wonder if I'm flirting with that in a way now. I felt for a long time that if anything, my baseline expectations for how people behave overall were, if anything, a little cynical, rather low bar. Over the last few years, I've started to feel that I was, if anything, naive. So many of us seem to have ignored the universal dictum to treat others as we would like to be treated, to practice empathy. One part of me rebels against accepting that so many people are so cut off from each other. The other part says that if I want a better world and I want to facilitate change, then I'd better start where people are, not where I want them to be, just like I had to in detox. In fact, the job to be done is pretty much a detox of society. The challenge is this: if I fully accept how big the mountain is to be climbed, it's intimidating, to be honest. It can feel really disheartening. That's the problem with acceptance. It's a lot of baggage that comes with it. I'm left with hope. Hope that the warp and woof of the history of the human race will continue, at times despite itself as it has so far. Hope that allows me to do what I can, where I can, rather than ponder too long on the height of that mountain before us. I have to accept that this is the way it's always been and that I'd better be okay with that. Well, I don't know that I'll say I can ever be completely okay with it. I mean, I'll still have my utopian fantasies and I'll be ready to engage in a little recreational complaining. But I hope that knowing and accepting where we are helps me to choose the right path in being a part of healing an injured people.
Good morning, and it's Susan again. My reflection this morning is called Acceptance of the Good Stuff. True confessions. I watch more TV than I ought to. At least these days I do. Something I stumbled upon on YouTube is a happy video of surprise puppy gifts. Usually these are puppies given to children in a box just loosely wrapped. There's a remarkably common reaction that the girls have after they open the box. Their eyes open wide, they cover their faces with their hands, and they begin crying hysterically. And through their tears, in their disbelief, they ask, "Can we keep it? Is it ours?" Eventually, they pick up the puppy, sobbing through their reallys and thank yous, hug it to them, and just keep crying. One girl sobs, "I love it more than anything in the world." They are, at first, having trouble accepting this incredible joy. They don't believe their good fortune, are cautious about attaching until they are told yes. To change the subject, there's a wonderful story going on. Someone so dear to me is falling in love. Someone so dear to me has been in love before, but it hasn't worked out well, and she is cautious about trusting her instincts about love. But she has opened the box and sees the remarkable gift of the possibility of love inside. She has stared at it with disbelief and is asking, is it mine? Can or should I keep it? She is being cautious. She is having trouble accepting the possibility of joy and love. This is someone she has known since before she can remember, from RE in a UU church. It is someone she gazed at with moony eyes as an adolescent, someone she has played music with over the years and has had a deep friendship with for decades. I often get to talk with this someone so dear to me. I have told her a secret. My secret was that 1 month after I married for the second time, 9/11 happened. My reaction was one I never would have expected. You see, I had grown up with parents who were in an unhappy marriage destined to end, and I had had a marriage which became unhappy and ended. And I entered this new marriage with a little trepidation. I didn't quite trust the future would remain happy. And then I saw the surviving partners of those who were lost on 9/11. On television, I saw their raw testimonies about the depth of their happiness in their marriages, the stories of their closeness, that there was love in marriage that lasted. It was a window into real relationships that were happy and lasting. I had never really known that could happen. It was a revelation to me that couples could love and be happy, and it allowed me to accept I also could love and be happy. Acceptance of love and happiness. This one so dear to me is on her journey, a journey which, like a flower, will unfold in its own time. She is excited, but still in utter disbelief at the same time. Acceptance of the possibility of love can be a process. If I could tip the scales, I would, but it is not my process. So all I can do is wish and hope for the world and all of you in this world where things do not always turn out well, that we can be accepting of love and happiness. Let us be open to it.
For our closing words this morning, we're bringing back the much-loved Serenity Prayer, offered this time as a blessing. May we all have the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, the courage to change the things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Blessed be.